Welcome to A Teaspoon of Healing, where we explore the pathways to wellness and vibrant living. Listen to personal stories of healing and interviews with experts. It's time to open a doorway to healing in your life through positive changes. Here is your host, Dawn Damari.
Hi, I'm Dawn Damari, and you're listening to another episode of A Teaspoon of Healing. Today's topic is overwork and stress, and how those things can not only cause health problems, they can make health issues worse. And for those of you who are small business owners, entrepreneurs, you'll definitely want to listen. My guest is Phil Newton. He's the owner of a company called Unhustled, and he used to work extremely long hours, and he turned everything around to where he works a lot less hours, has a lot more free time, and gets a lot more done. So stay tuned, and you can apply these tips not only to your business, but to your life.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Please consult a physician or other health professional before undertaking changes in lifestyle or wellness habits. The author claims no responsibility to any person or entity for any liability, loss, or damage caused or alleged to be caused directly or indirectly as a result of use, application, or interpretation of the information presented herein.
And before we get into our interview, let's hear from one of our sponsors, Goff Tours.
Hi, this is Goff, owner of Goff Tours, specializing in stand-up paddleboarding or surfing lessons. I even do snorkeling. You can reach me here. Orange County has what you're looking for. You can contact me via email at gofftours@gmail.com, or mobile number is 949-338-5937, gofftours.com.
Hi, I'm Dawn Damari, and you're listening to A Teaspoon of Healing. Today, my guest is Phil Newton from Unhustled. Hi, Phil.
Hi, how you doing? Pleasure to be here.
I wanted to talk about Unhustled and how your experience with overwork may have actually led to some health issues or exacerbated health issues you had, and help people out there who are going through the same thing. What changed for you from your working 14-hour days to doing what you're doing now, which is very successful?
I mean, I suppose like most people, you buy into the philosophy of if you work hard, because I've got to admit, I was taught that growing up. If you work hard, you'll see some sort of measure of success. However you measure it, whatever success means to you, you'll get it from working hard. And that usually means long, hard hours, 10, 12, 14, 15-hour days. And that's what I saw my parents do as well. Brought up on a working farm, sun up to sundown, or usually well after sundown. So that long hours was quite common for me. So I just thought that's how you did it. So when I started my kind of working journey, it was, let's do that. Let's do all the hours that, land in front of us as much as possible, under the pretense that we'll see some sort of success, either financially or career progression or whatever it is that you're pursuing. And that creates all sorts of stress. And what I didn't realize, I hadn't made the connection at that point, but I'd had on and off issues all my life with health, which I now know is Crohn's disease, but I'd had little mini flare-ups, and maybe I was just a little bit more of a stressful child, who knows? But looking back on it, that was certainly, very prevalent in my growing up. So the tipping point was just in my early 20s. I was, driving, an hour and a half, 2 hours to work, which is standard for most people. Then you're doing the long, extra hard work from a time point of view, and then same journey back. And that just adds up and takes its toll. And something just burst. And for me, it just created this, flare up of the Crohn's disease. And I realized my lifestyle had to change. The good news is there is a happy ending to the solution. I generally think it was the best thing that ever happened to me, while having a priest stand over me and ask me if I want the last rites wasn't a pleasant experience.
Oh, gosh.
But
you'd actually had a priest read your last rites, so it got really serious.
No, well, yeah, I had a little knock on the door while I was in hospital. It was really serious.
Right.
I always joke about it because, you've got to laugh about these things.
But this is really serious, and this is what can happen to people. So this is really serious. This is what a wake-up call.
Exactly. In my case, it was Crohn's disease, but it could be any sort of issue, whether it's mental health, physical health. I mean, usually all these things get manifested in some way.
Right.
Something sacrifices or get sacrificed if you're, neglecting yourself in some way. And me, it was the Crohn's disease really came came to life. And, I just had a knock on the door while I was in bed. I didn't realize actually how bad I was. Just a knock on the door. And the hospital chaplain just came in and said, "Son, would you like the last rites?" And I was like, "No, I don't think I do. I'm not ready to give up."
Right.
But it was just that kind of like, holy smokes, is it that bad?
Yeah.
Because I just didn't realize. But that for me was the kind of the pivotal moment, that the kind of as well as having a physical punch in the guts, a literal reaction. I just thought something's got to change. What are all those things that you want to do? And the lifestyle's got to change. What was the cause? What was the tipping point? All the things that led up to that over a period of weeks, months, maybe years that put me in hospital beds. That's got to change. And for the following couple of years, I was ultimately housebound because, hey, it's a really serious condition, and it took a while for it to actually settle down so I could essentially live a normal life. And again, the good news is, as I was starting to say earlier, is that in my situation, it's very mild, and that there's various degrees of this where your intestine essentially does not work. To, in my case, where I've got a small section of my intestine which has got permanent scarring. So I do have, while it's technically not active, I've got permanent mild symptoms. So that's what I live with on a day-to-day basis, which creates its own problems and frustrations. But what I'm very conscious of is I don't want to do the 14, 15-hour days. I don't want to be sat at the computer all day. I don't want to be doing the things that everyone else says that you've traditionally got to do to see some type of success with career or work or your own business. So I have to, what I want to do is spend as little time as possible doing the things that are going to put food on the table, but at the same time get the most out of it so that I can just grow a business and see the fruits of that labor come good. So it's trying to not sacrifice time for success. And I think that's the mistake that most people make. And that's certainly what got me into, the health troubles that I experienced.
Absolutely. And a lot of what happens is in the gut. A lot of your serotonin is made in the gut, everything. It affects the way you eat when you're working 14-hour days. I've been there. Most of us have.
You neglect something, don't you? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, food, diet, exercise.
Exactly.
Yeah, all sorts of things get sacrificed.
And culturally, in our culture, it's just the way it is. Well, if you're not doing this, if you're not hustling, especially now, hustle is such a term.
It makes my eyes roll.
Boss babe, hustle, spinning your wheels, trying to get maybe 1 or 2 clients.
I think the objection I have with hustle is it's taken on a different meaning to what I think most people intended. The hustle till your eyeballs fall out is, what a few of the popular gurus like to say and talk about. I don't think that you need to exchange time to have a hustle going on, whether it be a full-time thing or a side hustle. If you want to do something else, I think you've just got to be smart about what you do. I mean, if you genuinely get pleasure out of spending all day sending tweets, like certain big business guru celebrity types, if that's your thing, then fine. I'm not saying don't do it, but you don't need to spend all day doing it. Do it to the point where it makes sense, but don't spend 14 hours a day doing the things that are just not going to be productive either for your life or for your business. You've got to find that happy medium. And I don't mean like work-life balance, because it's all just life. I don't believe that there is that thing, but you can be biased on the scales of I'm working too much, and that's at the sacrifice of health, family, and all the other things. So have that happy balance, and just do the things, certainly from a work point of view, do the things that make sense. And I mean, to try and get unhustled, which is really the angle that I really want to kind of, the message I want to get to the world. You don't have to work all day. I mean, if you would just very simply take for example, let's take a sheet of paper. You write 2 lines down, vertical lines down on a landscape. So you've got 3 columns. And if you write down either from a work or a life point of view, because this can be applied in any way, but let's just focus on work for a moment. All the things that you've kind of love doing, the reason why you're in business in the first place, the things that you love doing. Then there's all those things that you have to do. Like the accountant, I don't get any pleasure out of doing the bookkeeping, the accounting, but I have to do it. And then there's all the things that you're doing, but you hate doing, and they're maybe not even productive towards your either business, if you're doing this from a business point of view, or from a life point of view. All those things that you hate doing. If you just put a line through all of them, then suddenly you've freed up a significant chunk of your time, because we spend more time doing the things that we hate doing because we hate doing them. And in my case, what I found is I probably freed up about, 60% of my time. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less, depending on what you're doing. But you can keep doing this process. Just stop doing the things that are not important to either life or business. They're just not moving the needle for you at all. Just stop doing them.
And how do you identify these? And for some of these things that do need to be done, is it best to outsource things when you can? What do you suggest, like a first step for somebody who's just where you were?
So we need to identify the things first.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can identify the things that you love doing, the things that you have to do, but maybe are not fond of, and then the things that you hate. Get rid of things that you hate. You don't need to be tweeting all day. You don't need to be doing YouTube. You probably don't need to be, if you can afford it, maybe you pay someone to do other things, or just simply stop doing the things that are just not important to your life. That leaves you with the two things. You've got that list of things that you kind of maybe do. They do have a tangible result. Maybe it's some social media, maybe it's something but it's just time consuming.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've identified that list of things that you kind of have to do or you need to do because, hey, they work, but you don't like doing them. That's that kind of center column.
Yes.
That's when you can go through that list because you freed up some time from stopping the things that are just not productive at all. You can then spend that extra time to try and systematize the things or at least, you can use like a screen recorder and record the things that are repetitive, map out so you've got this kind of standard operating procedure, if you like, so that you could effectively hand that off to someone else. But because you've not got that already, it's time consuming to, if you were to hire someone in and say, do this thing, it's not productive because you've then got to spend probably more time than necessary. So the first step is to map out those things that you do that are repetitive so that you can then hand them off. And you've got this training manual for all those tasks that are unnecessary. Like, for example, if you mentioned social media, if you've got a posting schedule and you're posting on Facebook a little bit of content there, maybe you post the same thing on LinkedIn, maybe you post a little tweetable on Twitter, and maybe you send a snippet out to your email list, then brings them back to the blogs, then you've got to put the blog on. And once you've written the thing that you're an expert in, then that gets sent out. But if you can map out, okay, step number 1, I do this. Step number 2, I do that. Step number 3, I do this. And then it makes sense to think about, okay, is there any tools that can help me to automate that?
Of course, yeah.
And then do I need to input it into the automation tool myself? Could I hire someone to do the repetitive task of taking all that content and creating a posting schedule or a distribution calendar or whatever makes sense for you? That's where you can just cross it out on your list. Now it's not on the things that you have to do but don't need to do, because then that's going to free you up to spend time with the clients, the customers, the core business, the things that you love doing. That's the reason why you started doing that in the first place, so you can free up that time. But it's got to start with, you've got to identify it first, then think about how to actually do that. You can talk it through, if we can record it on a screen camera, and you can then start to think about passing it off to someone to go step by step and create a document from the video that you recorded. Might be the first step, so they understand the process in the first place. And it just frees up this time, and then you're not running around like a headless chicken. You're not doing all the hours that we were talking about. You're freeing your time up systematically. Again, I'm not saying it's going to be an easy task. No. It's well worth it, because by doing that process of just stopping the things that aren't important, by systematizing those that are necessary and genuinely move my business and life forward, it now means that I'm only doing 90 minutes a day. I'm not spending all day doing the things that I need to do to maintain and grow my business. And that means that I can have a life and do the things that I really enjoy doing outside of that. Now, because of that allowed me to care for my parents in the last 5 years of their life. And great. That was really something I would wish on everyone, whether it be their parents or family, because they stopped being my parents at a certain short point. And they became my best friends. And that's 5 years that my brother didn't have that. And I did. And you can see it in his eyes when we talk about it. He generally missed out on that. But that's what having that time freedom allowed me to do. And that's time you can spend doing hobbies, family, loved ones, whatever you want to do. That's why we're doing this. That's that for me, as you can probably gather, I'm getting quite emotional about it. That's unhustled. That's just being taking a pause, take a breath, and just figuring out, what do I really want out of life? Right. Then you can start to design this world that you want to live in by just thinking creatively. Well, not even thinking creatively, just stop doing the things that make you miserable.
Right.
And then it just frees up all the time, and you can focus that energy on the things that really do matter for you.
And the things that really do matter are oftentimes things that are not tied to our business. And that's why it's good to free up that time. And I'm so sorry about your parents and to hear about your brother. And it's very normal, though. It's so common.
Yeah, it's circle of life. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, they had a good run. I'm, as you probably gathered, the way I talk about, I am an optimist. I have got zero regrets when I'm certainly with that side of my life. I can genuinely look back and say I did everything that I could have done. And so many people look back on certain areas of life and they say, I wish I'd done more. And it's usually at the death of a loved one, you know, whether your parents passed on or you know, the end of a chapter in your personal book, whatever that end of the chapter is. Everyone looks back and says, I wish I'd done more. If I'd only had the time. Oh, there's that phrase. If I'd only had the time to do insert the thing. Now we can find that time, you know, and just with a little bit of creative thinking.
Absolutely. So there's something I wanted to ask. It's unrelated to health, but it's interesting to me and to some of my listeners who are building a business. It's about niching and the importance of finding a niche. And I really agree with this as well. I mean, it's really something that's been helping me. Has it been helping me? I mean, I'm just starting out, but it's what is the importance of the niche, and how can you find your perfect niche and just profit from this and doing less and focusing in and getting more gains that way?
I think I'd like to preface it by saying that it always used to be a joke that underwater basket weaving was given as an example when people were talking about imaginary businesses to illustrate a point.
Right.
Now that's a thing. Underwater kickboxing is a very thriving industry.
Right.
So I think firstly, if you want to pick a niche, pick something that really interests you. Everyone, you know, from a career and work point of view, many people do things that they hate doing. And we live in such an abundant world where we can literally choose something that is really interesting and passionate to our life and well-being, because I get to do that thing that I don't consider work for the rest of my life. And whatever that thing is for you, that's what you get to choose. So I think if you can mix some elements of that into your decision, then that would be great. Niching down, I think for me, my kind of first realization is when I first started business online back in 2001, I had the attitude, again, like most people, pile it high, sell it cheap. And it's got kind of work hard mentality. And from a business point of view, if you just pile it high, sell it cheap, the customers will come, you'll have lots of them. But then because it's cheap, it creates its own set of problems. Yes, you might have a lot of sales, but then those customers are going to take up a lot of time that you probably don't have. And you know, my whole ethos is I want less time. I want more of my own time, and I don't want to sell my time for money. So I think when you're niching down, you know, think about the end objective. What do you want is the end goal? I want something that gives me lots of free time. And then when you put that restriction on certain career choices or business decisions, they start to be less significant, less important, because with the pile high, sell it cheap attitude, it means that I've got to balance that with lots of time to make that type of business work, unless you're going to hire people in. I mean, at first, you're probably going to be doing a lot of things yourself if you're going to do the solopreneur type route. But then you get to free up that time later on. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. If you just bear with me a second. Where was I going with this?
No worries. It happens. I do it all the time.
Oh dear. It just happens from time to time. You can leave it in. I don't mind. I'm an idiot.
No, of course not. No, this is very informative. So it's also when you want to find your perfect client. So say you're in a specific business, nutrition, health, you want to find a specific client.
Pick the type of thing that you want to do, and then you can get to pick who would be the ideal person that you want to work with. Again, I'm thinking more of the ends rather than where I am right now. Okay. So what do you want? What would be the ideal person? What would be the ideal thing? Do you want to work with someone that's always moaning and bitching and complaining about the thing that you're trying to help them with, if you're a coach or the product or the thing that you're trying to sell? If they're always going to be in that negative mindset, I don't really want to work with that person.
Right.
Because I'm really I do a lot of mind work and self-improvement and meditation because my mental health is really important to me for all the same reasons that I mentioned earlier. So I get to choose who I work with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, lots of people kind of have the attitude of, do you have a pulse? Do you have some money? Great, so let's do business together.
Right.
And I think that's the wrong attitude. And again, I do appreciate that we've also got to put food on the table as well when we start out. But if you can be selective and set those standards early on, then that's going to help you niche down. So pick who you want to help and what you want to do and how you envisage the perfect experience that you can deliver the customer, that you can deliver the thing that you want to do. What would be the dream come true? What would be the end result? Not just for your customer, but what would be the experience for you? What would make you happy if you could only do one thing for the rest of your life? And how would that be if you were already there? So when you know that, you can start to work backwards and figure out, okay, well, how do I get there? That's what I think is a big part of niching down. And that's probably the first place that I would start. What would be that dream come true, both for you and the clients? And if you're already there, what does that look like? Because, when you know that, when you know the destination, you can work out the journey a lot easier because you know where you're going. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Absolutely.
Awesome. Another way I sometimes describe this is if we were to write a letter. Now we've got that ideal thing that we're going to do and the perfect clients that we want to work with. If we were going to write them a letter, a very personal letter to say, dear Bob, I've got this thing. I think it would really, really help you. It's going to be really beneficial and it's going to change your life. If that's because we're in business maybe to change people's lives. So if I was going to write them that letter, most people have Bob who lives on planet Earth. And that might be the way that they niche down. So if I work with coaches and consultants and business owners, that would be like planet Earth. Anyone who owns a business is a potential client. But we need to go deeper to niche down to figure out, again, with this imaginary letter that we're trying to write to this person. We need the name, the address, the street address, the city, the town, the zip code. We need as much detail to be able to post that letter because it's an important letter. It's going to change their lives. When I actually went and applied that, and it took me many years to start to do this, but when I did that, it meant that I'm excluding all the people who are going to create stress in my life.
Right.
So we can come at it the other way. Who don't you want to work with?
Okay.
I don't want to work with people who are moaning and bitching and complaining and taking up all my time. And if you have that and then you can put a picture of those people that you hate to work with. Say, I want to put barriers up. You're almost like a sales prevention department. How can I exclude those people from my life? And that might be another way. And sometimes people find that much easier because then, again, it's not a nasty thing. It's just, I don't like working with this type of person, but I love more of them. Okay. But it allows you to exclude the people in the same way as, like, how do I stop these people from coming in? Almost like in a nightclub, you've got the red velvet rope. If your name's not if your name's not down, you're not coming in.
Right.
That's what you're doing to your business.
Right.
I kind of went off on a little bit of a tangent there. Does that make sense?
It totally
As you can probably
does.
gather, I'm a little bit chatty, Dawn.
No, that's good. That's good. No, it's almost like I was taught in a business seminar to create an avatar. It wasn't really the exclusionary principle. That's actually a different way to look at it. And it's good because it helps you narrow it down.
I don't want stress in my life. How can I prevent those people? So I'm highly motivated to do that as quickly as possible so that I can create this stress. I want a stress-free life. It's as simple as that. That's the top of my priority. And, we can do that process in so many areas of our life and not just business.
Okay.
I mean, I've actually done that twice in my personal life where I've gone to the extreme lengths of cutting people out of my life because they brought so much anguish to, I can't think of a stronger word, but they brought so much pain and frustration into my world.
Yeah,
I didn't want them to be a part of it anymore.
Right.
And I think that's it's selfish, but it's such a healthy thing to do.
Yes, it is.
And you've got to give you your own peace of mind first. By doing all these processes in business and life, we create this positive environment around us. And I've got to admit, I'm generally one of the happiest people. I'm at one of the happiest times of my life because of this process, because it's such a stress-free. And don't get me wrong, I still experience stress and frustration. But because you have this, how can I exclude that from my life as much as possible?
Right.
Then it just creates an environment where you can thrive in, both in business and life.
Right. Great. Well, Thank you. I really do agree that you can use that in many ways of what you don't want to deal with in your personal life, your business life, in lots of ways. So that's really helpful. So as far as how do people get in contact with you if they want to work with you?
Yeah, well, that's very kind of you to ask. If people do want to get in touch, if they've liked anything that I've said or want to have a conversation, if they don't mind me talking at them, we'll get on like a house on fire.
Okay.
And they can reach me at my website. It's Unhustled. It's the opposite to hustle. It's hustle with an un on the front and a D on the ends, unhustled.com. And if we go to the / teaspoon, there'll be a lovely picture of yourself on there, just a reminder of where you heard them from. And they can find, all my contact details there. So unhustled.com / teaspoon.
Excellent. And is there anything you'd like to share with our listeners before we sign off?
No, I'm very conscious this is a more health-focused show. And while we've spoken more from an angle of business, the things that we've talked about and spoken about today, you can apply them in your life. Even if you're not a business owner, you can apply lots of these tactics and strategies to give yourself a stress-free life or to pursue the things that genuinely give you happiness, because it's the same principles that I've used in business, in life, and just how to create that abundance of happiness and optimism around you. And that really is what Unhustled gives me. And that's what I'm trying to kind of give to the world in such a small way by doing small interviews like this. So yeah, I'm really appreciative to you to allow me to get that over to your audience.
Wonderful. No, I'm sure it's going to be really helpful. And like you said, even if you don't own a business, you can apply this to your life, to your personal life, to your family. I don't know, probably even to anything. So thank you so much, Phil.
Thank you very much for having me, Dawn.
And appreciate you being on the show. Thank you. Have a good day.
And yourself. Bye now.
Thank you for listening to this episode of A Teaspoon of Healing. If you have any questions for me or for Phil, go to my website, teaspoonofhealing.com. You can click on contact. I'll get back to you. And you can also email me, dawn@teaspoonofhealing.com, or visit my social media, facebook.com /teaspoonofhealing, or on Instagram, I am @teaspoonofhealing. And don't forget, you can visit Phil's page at unhustled.com /teaspoon and find out more about him. And stay tuned for next week. We'll have another episode.
Thank you for listening to A Teaspoon of Healing with Dawn Damari, your home for wellness and vibrant living. For more resources on wellness and vibrant living, visit us online at teaspoonofhealing.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Please consult a physician or other health professional before undertaking changes in lifestyle or wellness habits. The author claims no responsibility to any person or entity for any liability, loss, or damage caused or alleged to be caused directly or indirectly as a result of use, application, or interpretation of the information presented herein.
Hey there, this is Sean.
And this is Frank J. from Sensibly Cynical.
And you can check us out on iTunes, Google Play, or your favorite podcatcher application.
Or just be real, you can just Google our name, Sensibly Cynical.
That too.